This is 51 land words. For classes and practice tests, visit therealestateclass.com and subscribe to the latest real estate exam preparation materials. Land is real estate or property, minus buildings and equipment, that is designated by fixed spatial boundaries. Raw land. Land found in its natural state. This means that there have been no man-made improvements such as clearing, digging, grading, cleaning, and more. Real estate. Real estate refers to land as well as any physical property or improvements affixed to the land, including houses, buildings, landscaping, fencing, wells, etc. Wetlands. Wetlands are areas where water covers the soil or is present either at or near the surface of the soil all year or for varying periods of time during the year, including during the growing season. Air lots. Designated airspace over a piece of land. An air lot, like surface property, may be transferred. Air rights. The right to use an open space above a property, usually allowing the surface to be used for another purpose. Subsurface rights. Subsurface right refers to a landowner's right over minerals and other substances found below a property. A person acquires a subsurface right through purchase from a landowner. The assessment of subsurface rights for tax purposes is made on the production of oil and gas from the subsurface. Allodial system. A system of land ownership in which land is held free and clear of any rent or service due to the government. Commonly contrasted to the feudal system, land is held under the allodial system in the United States. In a feudal system, a peasant or worker known as a vassal received a piece of land in return for serving a lord or king, especially during times of war. Vassals were expected to perform various duties in exchange for their own fiefs or areas of land. Annexation. Converting personal property into real property. To affix, attach, annex. Plant the bulb. Alluvial deposits. Alluvium is typically made up of a variety of materials, including fine particles of silt and clay and larger particles of sand and gravel. When this loose alluvial material is deposited or cemented into a lithological unit or lithified, it's called an alluvial deposit. Severance. Changing an item of real property to personal property by detaching it from the land. For example, cutting down a tree. Area. A level surface or piece of ground. The size of a surface. The amount of a two-dimensional object. Acre. 43,560 square feet. 4,840 square yards. 4,047 square meters. 160 square rods. 0.4047 hectares. A measure of land. Assemblage. The combining of two or more adjoining lots into one large tract. The resulting added value is called plottage value. Emblements. Fructus industrialis, meaning crops produced by manual labor. Crops that were planted with the intent of harvesting are considered the personal property of the person who planted them. Emblements are treated legally as the personal property of the farmer, despite growing on land that belongs to someone else. Fruits of nature. Fructus naturalis are the natural fruits of the land on which they arise, such as agricultural produce and wild game. In many common law legal systems, fructus naturalis are considered to be part of the real property. Perennials. Immobility. Land is physically immobile. It cannot be moved from one geographical location to another. Due to its immobility, the value of a piece of real estate is directly affected by its surroundings, things external to itself. Indestructibility, a physical characteristic of real estate referring to the concept that it can't be destroyed. Non-homogeneity, unique, no parcels of real estate are exactly alike. Improvements. Improvements to real property means a permanent addition to or betterment of real property that enhances its capital value and that involves the expenditure of labor or money and is designed to make the property more useful or valuable as distinguished from ordinary repairs. Occupancy permit. A certificate of occupancy is a document issued by a local government agency or building department certifying a building's compliance with applicable building codes and other laws and indicating it to be in a condition suitable for occupancy. Waste. Any damage to real property by a tenant which lessens its value to the landlord, owner, or future owner. Oil and gas lease. An oil lease is essentially an agreement between parties to allow a lessee, the oil and gas company and their production crew, to have access to the property and minerals, oil and gas, on the property of the lessor. The lease agreement is a legal contract of terms. Legal description. Description that would allow a competent surveyor to delineate the exact boundaries of the property. The legal description of a property does not include the buildings on it, only the boundaries of the property. Metes and bounds. Metes, distance, and bounds, direction, is the oldest method for creating land descriptions. This legal land description is primarily used to describe the location of land in states on the east coast of the U.S. Monuments. A monument is a natural or man-made fixed object used as a permanent reference point for surveying or to mark land ownership boundaries. Rectangular survey system. A system established in 1785 by the federal government, describing land by reference to principal meridians and baselines. Survey. A property survey is a procedure that defines a parcel of land using distances and angles. This would also include gas lines, roads, walls, streams, or anything relative to the property. Spot survey. A spot survey is a survey showing the location, sizes, and shapes of the buildings on a lot. Visual inspection is not as accurate and should not be relied upon if there is a question of an encroachment. Setback. A distance from a curb, property line, or structure within which building is prohibited. Setbacks are building restrictions imposed on property owners. Local governments create setbacks through ordinances and building codes, usually for reasons of public policy such as safety, privacy, and environmental protection. Plat map. A plat is a map of a land area, usually on the scale of a neighborhood or county township, and a plot is a piece of land used for a single purpose, such as a park or home. Essentially, a plat map records a collection of plots that make up a neighborhood. Not all property is platted. Encroachment. Encroachment is a situation in real estate where a property owner violates the property rights of his neighbor by building on or extending a structure to the neighbor's land or property. Appurtenant easement. An easement is a right held by one person to use the land of another for a specific purpose. An appurtenant easement is a type of easement that runs with the land, as opposed to without, meaning if the property is sold, the easement remains with the land. Dominant tenement. Property having an easement right through another adjoining property. Benefited party. Servient tenement. Property through which the easement passes is considered to have the servient tenement. Burdened party. Area preference. Area preference, or situs, is the most important economic characteristics of land. Situs is based on many factors, such as history, convenience, and reputation. A home in a neighborhood with great schools and a low crime rate will generally command a higher price. A house in a high crime neighborhood with poor schooling would be priced lower. Brownfields. A former industrial or commercial site where future use is affected by real or perceived environmental contamination. Landfill capping is a containment technology that forms a barrier between the contaminated media and the surface, thereby shielding humans and the environment from the harmful effects of its contents and perhaps limiting the migration of the contents. Buffer zone. The area or strip of land that separates one land use from another. Eminent domain and condemnation. Eminent domain is a right of a government to take private property for public use by virtue of the superior dominion of the sovereign power over all lands within its jurisdiction. Eminent domain gives governments the power to take private property. However, the government must compensate the owner for seizing the property. Condemnation is the seizure of private property by a government for a public purpose. Density zoning. Density zoning is zoning restrictions upon land use intensity. Density zoning can be used to limit or encourage development in alignment with planning objectives according to the needs and objectives of the community. Developer. Real estate development is the act of buying land, creating new buildings, and selling the property for a profit. The person that coordinates the process is called a real estate developer. A real estate developer coordinates the whole process from the beginning to the end. Subdivision. A subdivision is a parcel of land divided from a larger area. Its purpose is to split a large tract of land into smaller ones that are easier to develop and can be developed independently of one another to increase the growth and maximize the use of space. Percolation test. Determines the ability of soil to absorb and draw down water. A percolation test is essential to determine the location of a drainage field for waste disposal. Easement. An easement is a legal right to use another's land for a specific limited purpose. Environmental Impact Statement, EIS. Study required by the National Environmental Policy Act for all federal and federally related projects, which details a development project's impact on energy use, sewage systems, drainage, water facilities, schools, and other environmental, economic, and social areas. Environmental Site Assessment, ESA. A report prepared for a real estate holding that identifies potential or existing environmental contamination liabilities. The analysis typically addresses both the underlying land as well as physical improvements to the property. Zoning. Zoning refers to municipal or local laws or regulations that dictate how real property can and cannot be used in certain geographic areas. Master Planned Community. A master planned community, or MPC, is a large, planned residential neighborhood. In contrast to most residential developments, MPCs are often self-contained, small cities with commercial properties and extensive recreational, educational, and other amenities. It's not uncommon for an MPC to be 10,000 acres, 15.6 square miles, or greater in size. Planned Unit Development. A planned unit development, PUD, is a housing development not subject to standard zoning requirements for the area. With permission from the local government, a developer establishes criteria that determine the private and common areas and building guidelines. These may include street lighting designs, street width standards, architectural styles, building height standards, land coverage ratios, and common area park or amenity requirements. Planned unit developments are often used to cluster homes closer together than would otherwise be allowed by local zoning laws. For classes and practice tests, visit therealestateclass.com and subscribe to the latest real estate exam preparation materials.